Have you been considering creating a trust? You get all kinds of mixed messages today. Oh, it's too expensive. You don't need it. A will's good enough. Well, tonight, this is what we're going to talk about. Try to help make it understand as easy as possible for you. I'm going to start with a quick little quiz. Do you recognize who this person is? If you guess a young red fox, you are correct. You probably recognize Jackie O, Michael Jackson, probably also recognize Babe Ruth, and for sure Marilyn Monroe. And how about Elvis Presley? Well, why do I bring these people up? Why am I showing you these pictures? Well, for the simple fact is they're all past, yes, and they all were pretty famous, and they had quite a bit of money. Even though they had money and they had advisors, all had screwed up estate plans. It's just trying to show you that people with a lot of money also can have screwed up. And if you don't have a plan in place, that's never a good thing. So my name is Jim Lambert, and I started First Choice Consulting back in 1999, 2000. And I did this with my grandparents in mind. They were good, hardworking people. My grandfather served in World War II, came back after the war and worked for Sikorsky Aircraft for 42 years. My grandmother during the war, her name was Rosie. She truly was Rosie the Riveter. She worked at Remington Arms, GE, Sikorsky's. So she worked at a whole bunch of different places, like a lot of women during that time, to help out with the war. So you also might recognize me from being on WICC, WELI, on the radio shows. I did a lot of them on Saturday morning. I'm a certified financial fiduciary, and I'm what they call an RSSA. What the heck is that? Well, that's a registered Social Security analyst. And all you really need to know at that point is I've taken a lot of tests and promised as a fiduciary to always serve the client first. That's always the most important thing anybody can do, is make sure you can't be in business for a long time if you're not taking care of the clients first. So I'm going to talk to you about trust. Now, let me just tell you, I'm not an attorney. I don't get paid to create you a trust. That's not what happens. But I found that helping people with financial services for so long that a lot of people, even if I do the best plan possible, at the end of the day, they go to a nursing home, they have a lawsuit, an accident, they could lose a lot of their money. And this is what I'm trying to help people avoid. So full disclosure, I make $200 on a trust. So I'm not going to whack you over the head and try to sell you something. I just find that it's a great tool for people later on down the road. And hopefully your family never has any issues at all. But listen, that's not what happens for most people today. So when I look at this trust, what happens? What do I see is, and you've probably seen them, or maybe you've even had one in the past. They're usually a big binder and a 5-inch binder. And they got a whole bunch of loose pieces of paper in there. And you got all kinds of legal mumbo jumbo in there. But again, I ask you, what happens when you need to make a change when you have this book trust? Well, who's in control now? Not you. Because every time there's a change in your family, there's a law change, guess what? You now have to go to an attorney, schedule the appointment, go there. Going to take a couple of weeks for them due to the changes. And then what happens? You're going to get billed for that. So I have some issues with this stuff, especially today. I think about the major floods, fires, tornadoes. How many of these things are getting lost or ruined? And then what happens is if your law office got trashed at the same time, guess what? Now you got to start all over again. So, I think about the old telephone. Remember the telephone on the wall? Well, that served a great purpose. It does a phone. We still have a cell phone today. It makes a phone call. but it does so much more today. It's the cell phone's my camera, it's my email. It does everything, maybe a little bit easier. So, of course, I wish some days I didn't have one, so I wouldn't have to get chased down all the time. But simple is there's been improvements. And what am I talking about? Well, I found a company called Integrated Trust Systems. Now, they've been around since 1985. They have over 25,000 clients. And what they have done is they put this e-estate plan together. Makes it pretty easy for clients. So what happens is, think about it. When I have the book trust, to make a change, I have to go back to the lawyer's office and pay another fee. Well, when I have a digital trust, I can make changes from anywhere. I can be sitting down at the kitchen table to make a change on my trust. So what Integrated Trust Systems does, it's for short, is they charge a one-time fee. Okay? One-time fee, plus they charge you $95 a year to have this plan. Well, this $95 a year, they give you a bunch of different things built into that. We're going to discuss those as we go along. All right. Now, this is Mo Daka. Now, Mo Daka he is a super smart guy. He has now helped probably the last 4 or 5 trusts that we've sent in, and he's helped them. Everyone has said just great things. So what happens? What is the process? Remember I told you I made $200. What I do at that point is I'll do a free consultation for you and kind of go through the pros and the cons. And then the sequence is this. When we do this, I help you name the trust, take the credit card information, I get this done. Then what happens? We're going to set you up with the first meeting. Now, when I think about real estate, guess what? What's the 3 words that always come to mind when anyone talks about real estate? Location. Well, when we talk about trust, what's the 3 words there? Funding. Now, what is funding? It doesn't mean you're adding money to that. No, funding is you take the assets that you already have and you retitle those to the trust. So what I find amazing is when we look at that book trust happening today, a lot of the lawyers in our area, they're not licensed. They can't help you. They're not helping you fund the trust. So when they're not helping you and they say, here's what you need to do. If you have to contact your mortgage company, the car company, and all kinds of different stuff, it's a pain in the neck. So therefore, what happens? It doesn't always get done. So I think Mo and his team do a wonderful job. So again, the first thing that we do is we schedule you with a funding manager. That's who you're going to talk to first. And then to make it even easier, I say, listen, you can go, remember that I showed you that online thing? You can go in there and put your documents in there. But I find it's much easier for clients. I gather their information. They need that 1 page of their document. I take that and I send it to the funding manager. So this way, they put all the information in so it's done correctly. So it makes it easier all the way through. And we want to make sure your trust is properly funded. So let's learn a couple different things. Now, what happens if you have no plan? Nothing going on. What's going to happen? There are things that happen to us all the time in the world. How do you prepare for those? How to write the ultimate love note to your family. Tax-free income. People don't always realize that Social Security is taxed. And when we look at the taxes, could you reduce those? Yes, it's very possible that you can do that. So that's part of the things that we can help you with. Now, folks, it's impossible. As I told you, I'm not an attorney, so I don't have that skill set. But what happens is, since I've teamed up with Integrated Trust Systems, we now have the legal team. And then they also have tax attorneys, so we can get information there. And on the financial side, I'm helping people. My concept is making retirement enjoyable. So I help folks with the retirement income plans. Because let's face it, in America today, one of the biggest fears that we have is running out of money. And this is a true problem that a lot of people have. So we want to make sure you're on the right course to do that. So I can create the retirement income plan, help people with their Medicare. So now we don't run out and lose all our money because we have a trust that could be set up. And those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Again, I give you a complimentary consultation, so there's no charge on my side for any of that stuff. Okay, I'm going to go back to the actual book. And the reason I'm going back to this book is because these prices are all over the place. Now, I've been sending people to attorneys for years. Now, I sent my own parents, and they went out and they went to Milford, Connecticut, another very smart guy. And guess what? He wanted $5,000 to do the will. It's a couple of years ago now. And then $10,000 to do the trust. Now, I thought their stuff was pretty simple, but I thought that was kind of expensive for that. I'm not saying that was a ripoff or anything like that. I just felt that was expensive based on their situation. And then guess what? The more I learn, the more I have issues. So what happens is most people that are looking to do a trust are trying to make sure that everything's being efficient in their life. So now what happens is they're not going to give more money to the probate courts or to the lawyers. They want to make sure the money goes to them, right? So instead of going to Connecticut, I want it to go to their family. Now, have you ever thought about what state in our country is the best one for corporations? Think about Coca-Cola, Walmart, Microsoft. These companies all got incorporated in Delaware. Are any of them home-based in Delaware? None of them are, right? But more companies than not are incorporated in Delaware. Why? Because it has the best rules, best regulations for corporations. Have you ever thought about which is the best state to get a trust in? Well, guess what? Nevada pops up to be the best on most anybody, and do a search online. Listen, full disclosure here, check it out online, get information, but that's what you're finding. And there's all kinds of different studies that are being done to make sure that happens for you. So again, and why is Nevada one of the best states? Well, they're the only state in the country that has codified all their laws to make it digital. So when we talk about funding, guess what? The ITS program, Integrated Trust Systems, they can fund your trust in 1 hour. Why? Because it can be done digitally versus having this get sent over to here and getting it retitled over and having all those extra costs. So it makes life a lot easier. And when it's easy, it's going to get done. So when you buy new properties, you do some other kind of investment, something else, and you have another account, it's easy to put into your trust. So when you do pass away, we all will, guess what? It's not going to go to probate. So again, lots of reasons for the Nevada. There's articles out there today, and they consistently say the same thing. Again, we're just trying to help the families at this point because that's what life's about. So let's do this. Let's talk about some will or trust. Okay? We're going to talk about growth and protection. We're going to talk about some income planning. Okay? People don't even realize they have to pay taxes on Social Security and setting up that retirement income, especially one that you can never outlive. Okay? So that is a huge focus on how we help a lot of people today. You know, when I look at a will, okay, 40% of the families have a will today. Now, if you have a trust, does a trust going to guarantee you that you're not going to go to probate? No, it will not. And why? Because again, most people that I meet that have come to my office have a trust. It's not done properly and it's not funded properly. So therefore, they're going to wind up in probate. But it looks like today only 17% of the families actually have a trust. Now, let's take a look. Wealth Council did some findings. What they found was nearly half the people today said, we don't need a trust. That's for like the ultra wealthy. So not good. 25% they found was this. People don't want to talk about death. They don't want to ever think about dying. They don't want to plan for anything because they cannot even contemplate that happening to a loved one or never mind themselves. When we think about estate planning today, life insurance has a huge part in estate planning. Why? Because you can buy, if you don't have a good estate now plan, guess what? By adding life insurance for pennies on a dollar, that can certainly help your estate plan or create one. Then we look at 49% of the people say, I don't have enough assets to warrant that. Well, let me tell you this. In the state of Connecticut, there's a cutoff. If you have less than $40,000, you don't need to go to probate. But if you have more than $40,000 when you die, it's going to go to probate. Okay? That's not a lot of money. 61% of them say, my will is going to be fine. No problem having a will. Well, keep listening because we need to talk about that. 35% of us either personally experience or we know someone that has gone through a death in the family. And guess what? The family has major conflict. Some still don't talk today. This happened in my own family. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. They couldn't do anything there after that. They couldn't make any changes. So it became a huge problem inside the family where many of us still don't talk today. Very sad. 46% say, Jim Lambert, you are absolutely correct. I've been sitting on this for way too long. I need to get moving. Some will say, you know what? I don't like the way you talk. Maybe I'm going to go to another lawyer and I'm going to have my cousin's cousin help me out. So all different kind of scenarios. But guess what? Most of those people, if you're not going through Nevada trust plans, guess what? You're going to wind up with a book trust. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. So why might you need an estate plan in the first place? Well, we're going to look at some of the things that happen in daily scenarios in life. Okay. Sad, but things happen. I'm going to look at this. Say, what if my wife and I were in an accident? Now, I was kind of blown away. I did a little research myself because I had questions. And there's from Consumer Shield, I found that the last updated report was in 2022. Did you know that there were 16,200 accidents per day in the United States? Per day. In 2022, there was 42,000 people that perished in a car accident. That's 120 people a day. Now, in the state of Connecticut, in 2022, we lost one person per day that entire year. So again, pretty sad, but it's a situation that happens. I know I lost my best friend at a young age from a car accident, but not everyone perishes, right? So what if I wound up in the hospital? My wife and I are both in the hospital. Somehow my kids find out about this and they come running to the hospital. Is the doctor going to give them information? This is a difficult situation, right? Because what is the doctor probably going to say to them? Do you have any legal document that says that I can talk to you about your parents' medical situation? And one of the kids, if you got a couple of them, might say, well, yeah, I'm durable power of attorney for their medical needs. Great. Where's that information? Well, I don't know. It's probably home in my father's safe, right? Where a lot of men keep their stuff. Well, so that may not be an easy situation because they don't even have access to it. Now, remember I mentioned the $95 annual fee. Well, one of the things that they include is a medical card. Now, if one of you go into the hospital today and you can't communicate, guess what? The hospital's pretty good at going through your wallet. one of the things that they're looking for first is what? An insurance card. And then they find a card like this that says medical card on it. They kind of know what this is. They're going to go ahead and there's a website. They can type this in there and put in the ID. It's going to say all kinds of information. I look at my wife. She is deathly allergic to the dye they put into your body for an MRI or CAT scan. Well, wouldn't that be good to know, especially if you're traveling outside the insurance network? And now guess what? They type this in and then they can say that exactly what's happened. I can also say, hey, please notify this person, or my durable medical power of attorney so they have access and they can communicate on my behalf. So what we do is this. We would print out a card for your wallet, and then we would print out one for your spouse. And then if one of your kids or a friend, whoever the case is going to be your durable medical power of attorney, I'm going to put one in their wallet. So if something happens to you, they can show up to the hospital and say, here. They can also send an email to the doctor and say, here's the information. How would you like it? Right? So this way it gives proof on who you are, and it has no issues in that way. Now, I think this alone is a great reason to come in and schedule an appointment to take advantage of this. Let's look at scenario number 2. We look at a family, and this family looks like they've done pretty well. The father has managed to put a pretty good 401k together. So sadly, let's say he passes away. Well, very sad. But what's going to happen? His 401k is going to shift right over to his spouse or vice versa. Okay. Now, the parents in this situation, they have 2 sons. One you see here, and the other son, they don't see either. He's on the other coast, doesn't really communicate too much, but like a lot of parents, we're going to be fair, and 50-50 is going to go to our 2 sons. So if the mother passes, that's exactly what happens, right? 50-50. Now, I look at in my family, anytime we've ever gone anywhere, every trip, I've always driven. So can you imagine if the 3 of them are in the car and they pass away? I don't know which one passed away first, right? But here's what happened. Because the parents had a 50-50 for each son, guess what's going to happen? Here they are, very close to these grandchildren, not as close to the other son, but guess what happened? Because it was 50-50, and the son, don't know who passed first in that accident, guess what? 100% is going to go to the other son. That means these grandparents had no clue that they were going to cut out their grandchildren that they love so much. See, we don't know what we don't know. And this is part of the process that doing this trust will help you set up. So you're very clear on what happens in the future. And hopefully everything's normal. But things do happen, as we know. Okay, let's look at scenario number 3. Now, this is something called joint tenancy. Now, most likely, if you own a house today with your spouse, this is how you have it set up. So, if I died, if I had a problem, my wife just takes over, vice versa, no issues. You do go to probate and say, hey, guess what? My spouse passed. And then they go ahead and they assign that over. Now, as we look at this couple, okay, the parents here, they are thinking to themselves, like many of you are saying, as we're getting older, it might make sense for us to put our house and our accounts in our daughter Sarah's name in this case, because it could be easier later on down the road. Now, joint tenancy is great until it's not. So let's think what happens. So in this situation, here they do this. They move all their stuff over, okay? They think this is the best thing that they can do. But little did they know that Sarah's husband, Mike, was having an affair with the woman down the street. Well, they get divorced. Now, Mike's divorce attorney calls him and says, listen, I'm going through the assets and I found during your marriage that Sarah got 50% of the house and 50% of the assets in the bank. How do you want to proceed? Now, can you imagine these poor parents, again, who are thinking they're doing the best for their family, now have to go to the bank? They have a paid off house. They're in retirement. What do they got to do? They got to refinance the house in order to pay Mike off. Now imagine the conversation with the banker. What do you need this money for? You're going to building a new in-ground pool? No. You taking the family around the world? No. What's going on? What do you need the money for? We have to pay off my soon-to-be future ex-son-in-law. Can't imagine what a bad day that would be for this family. But let's keep Sarah in mind. Let's say now Sarah goes out after work and she has one too many cocktails. And guess what? She has an accident. She doesn't kill someone, but she puts them in a wheelchair for the rest of their life. Is that family going to go after everything that they have? We know today we live in a very litigious society, right? And guess what? And if that happened to one of my loved ones, I guess we're going after you too. Okay. But now these parents had nothing to do with that. And now they're in jeopardy, their home and their assets. Let's stick with Sarah one more time. So let's say Sarah, she opens a flower shop before COVID. Who knew how bad COVID was going to be, right? So she opens it up. She goes out and gets loans because she needs new refrigeration. She needs all kinds of stuff, all kinds of equipment for her small business. And guess what? During COVID, she couldn't make it in business. So it went bankrupt. Well, now what? Again, the parents are at risk again. Now, I know maybe you've already done this in your life, or you certainly know someone that has. So a huge problem today. So maybe that's something you want to come in to get addressed. Now, let's look at scenario number 4. Now, we're going to look at the mother, Catherine, and her daughter, Margaret. Now, Catherine got divorced when Margaret was very young, but she was able to script and save, and she was able to put money into her 401k, right? The best she could. She was able to get Margaret to go through nursing school. Sadly, Catherine passed away with cancer. Margaret, now a nurse, so she contacts the 401k company, and she says, listen, I have the death certificate, and I believe I'm the only beneficiary. Is that true? Yes, they look it up. So the company's going to say, great, send us the death certificate, and do you want us to mail you a check? What does Margaret say? Yeah, the money's coming my way. Well, Margaret wasn't a finance major, so she didn't know all the rules because there's the Secure Act. And guess what happened there? They said that law now is if I inherit an IRA, an individual retirement account, right, that's not from a spouse, then I only have 10 years to drain that account. So what does that mean? I could take a lump sum, or I can spread it out over 10 years. And over that 10 years, that would be a little less money coming in all at once. Well, what did she do? She got a lump sum for $200,000. Well, she's a nurse. So, and at this point, single. So when they added $200,000 to her income, what did that do? Well, that drifted her to a 32% tax bracket. So now she's paying a lot more money in tax because she didn't know. Again, we don't know what we don't know. So that one leaving her with $136,000. Now, can you imagine if Sarah was going through some kind of problem, a bankruptcy herself? All that money could have been at risk. What if she gets divorced? Well, Catherine didn't like him in the first place. So can you imagine now, Catherine, her money that she worked all those years to save so she can give that money to Margaret, now he's going to get half of that money altogether. Now, in this case, it was $200,000, but it was a lot for her to split that money up. But can you imagine if that your 401k was a lot more money and then going to someone that you didn't care for in the first place? Have you ever heard of an IRA beneficiary trust? Well, let me tell you, it does three things. A lot of us get to brag about our children, and that's a wonderful thing. But we also know not everyone's perfect. In this world, we have a lot of depression. We have people that have addiction problems, whether that's alcohol, drugs, gambling, shopping. Some people just cannot handle money at all. Now, it wouldn't probably be prudent for that person to get a large sum of money all at once. They say that most inheritance are spent within 18 months, but we need to protect our children because they don't always know they're young yet. But what if, again, the lawsuits were to happen? If there was divorce, so there's better ways to set this stuff up. And that's what it helps you do by creating the trust. Now, scenario number 5 is conservatorship. Now, I can tell you I'm a conservator. It is a difficult task altogether. But if I look at this case, here's a father and a son. The father had no paperwork done, nothing done, has a stroke, could not talk for months, and now is struggling to walk. But during this time, bills had to be paid. No will, no trust. So guess what? The son had to go to court to petition for conservatorship. And every time they have to do something, they have to get it approved. So not only do you have the task of taking care of this loved one, now you got to go fight with the court system to make sure it all gets done. Maybe you've known someone that's gone through this, and they can tell you how difficult it is. Now, maybe you've been married 30, 40, 50 years or longer, and you think about it, that's you're married longer than you were alive. And when we look at this, here's a case, right? He's in a coma. Okay. He cannot communicate at this point. And I look at my family. I think my father brought home a paycheck. Remember, there was paychecks back then. You had to go to the bank and cash them and do all that kind of stuff. Well, my father just gave the paycheck over to my mother. I'm sure she took care of it. And I think if my father ever signed a check, it probably wouldn't get cashed. That's probably common with a lot of families today, right? But it would be a little more difficult. Can you imagine if he's 75 and there's an RMD that he has to take out? Well, just because you're the spouse, that does not give you legal authority to talk on behalf of the other spouse. See, a 401k is only in your name. So a spouse can't just do whatever they want with that money at all. So this would be another situation that makes sense to schedule an appointment to come in and get that free consultation. Now, the next one I hope you never have to deal with, nor I hope I never have to deal with it. But my children are both over 18 years old. Now, I had an issue with my daughter's college over the finances. I called the college and I said, hey, we need to talk about this. And they said, whoa, Mr. Lambert, we cannot speak to you. We have to get your daughter's permission first. I go, hey, wait a minute. I've been paying all of these fees every month, right? Well, guess what? You need her permission to get her financials. Wasn't a happy camper. Well, can you imagine now if something happened to one of my children and they were in the hospital and they could not communicate? Just because I'm their parent and they live in my house, I do not have legal authority over them. The doctor's not going to give me the information. Legally, they cannot. They've been sued. So this is a major problem. I also look at it and say, how many of your adult children are now divorced? Now, they might have had a durable power of attorney, right, to help them with their spouse, but now divorced, they don't have anyone. This is a major concern today. Let's face it, when we look at accidents and illnesses, this is something that happens more than we care to see, right? But without having the proper plan, this could be detrimental. I always think if I brought my umbrella to work today, it's not going to rain. But the day I forget the umbrella, that's the day it pours. So be prepared. That's what I just try to think about. And that's what I want you to do. All the 7 scenarios that we just talked about, all of them can be done with the proper estate plan. And that's the important thing to know. So let's look at this. What's better, a will or a trust? Well, let me just make it easier. Integrated Trust Systems puts it all together as one package. So this way you have the will, you have the trust, and you're on good shape. And the IRA beneficiary trust is included in that as well. Okay. Now, probate court, what is it? How does it work? Okay. Can it be avoided? Well, listen, let me read you this. What is probate court? It's the granting of probate as the first step in the legal process of administering, I got it behind my screen here, so of the estate. It revolves around the deceased person distributing all the deceased person's property until a will. What does all this mean here? Okay. It simply means dead people cannot own anything. Dead people can't own anything. That's why probate has to retitle all this information over to someone else. Now, if everybody hates probate so much, why do we have probate? Well, let's say you're a contractor. I'm your client, okay? And I say, I'm doing this big project and I want all this masonry done in my backyard. I need a new walkway in there. I'm retiring and I'm doing all this stuff. And it's going to cost $50,000. So what do most contractors? You are going to charge me usually half the money up front. So I give that money and then you're worked on it for several weeks, all summer long. You've had your team, your staff working in my yard. And then I have a heart attack and die. I didn't pay you the other half of the money. Are my kids going to give you the other half of that money? Well, that's an issue, isn't it? This is why we have probate court to begin with. It protects people today from all kinds of different stuff. What do we see for problems with probate? Well, fees can be a problem. Now, in the state of Connecticut, we have a maximum $40,000 fee for the probate court. Now, what I get more complaints about is the legal fees. $250, good luck. $500 an hour, a lot more common. Some will charge you a flat fee, $3,000 to $10,000. Some will charge you a percentage. But again, legal fees can get very expensive. And again, what are we trying to do? Give our money to the state of Connecticut or to the family? Not a hard one. How about delays? Oh, I'm sure if you've been through this, maybe yourselves with family members, this is a big issue. Now, in Connecticut, like most states, when you pass, most of the time they put a 6-month freeze on all the assets. Well, let's think about it. If there's still house payments, if you have a mortgage, you still have to make payments. You got to pay the utilities. Can you imagine if I died in the middle of the winter? Someone's got to pay to heat the house or the pipes don't freeze and damage more. Then there's real estate taxes. So who's going to do this? If your accounts are frozen, maybe you got a rich kid and he's going to take care of all that. Good luck. I don't know. But having a plan makes some sense. Also, it's public record. Your probate is going to take your estate and they have to publicize it at least 3 times. This also brings out many people that can now contest the will. They can contest probate. So that's another thing to be concerned with. So if you just have a will, it's pretty much 100% guaranteed that it's going to go to probate. What does probate do again? All they do is they inventory all of your assets. So if we look at it, it comes down, it's probably going to cost about 10% in legal fees, right? Then you have taxes. That's another 30%. So that's going to leave the heirs about 60%. Now, setting up a revocable living trust, that can eliminate the legal fees. Now, if we can work on if we can reduce your taxes to nothing, which many people, we can help accomplish that. So that's not impossible. But let's just say we could save half the amount of taxes that your family have to pay. When would you want to know how to do that? Again, great reason to schedule an appointment to come into the office or schedule an online meeting. Now let's look at this. We got Elvis Presley popping up here again. Elvis Presley died and when? 1977. His estate was worth $10 million. $7.3 million went to probate and other costs. Probably why there's so many conspiracy theories today, why Elvis is still alive. Now, Howard Hughes, he died in 1976, 1 year before Elvis. $2.5 billion in the estate. 100 people made claims into the probate court. 7 years later, it went down to 22 cousins. And probably some of them he never met. Michael Jackson, he dies with $1 billion, 3 kids, 2 ex-wives. Of course, one of those was Elvis's daughter. And then the mother went to probate court. That took 7 years to settle. Abraham Lincoln, a lawyer, if we remember first, and also, of course, the 16th president of the United States. No will, no trust. Years later, Martin Luther King, no will, no trust. 45 years later, his children are still arguing about the estate. We know that families argue. Don't add fuel to the fire and making it more difficult for your family. We look at Prince. He died in an elevator, millions of dollars. All the accounts were froze. His family couldn't even come to the house because they couldn't even get there. So George Lopez went in there and helped the family out and gave them some money just because they had no assets that they could tap into. Not a good scenario. Probate is not the problem. Sometimes we talk about some of the benefits of how important probate can be, especially if you're a person that doesn't have a will or a trust. Even a will is going to get you to probate. So you hope that probate's a good way to go, but not recommended. Now, I think we probably should have learned a lot more of this stuff in high school. I don't think the law community has done a good job of educating the public about how to set things up. But then again, they don't have a great incentive because they're making a lot more money on the back end going to probate and charging you fees that way. And when families argue, that also increases the amount of money that they're going to get. So having a very clear cut, easy trust makes that a lot easier and avoids a lot of fees. Now, what if you already have a trust? If you already have a trust, is you want to make sure that your trust is properly funded. Or back to that, right? Number 2, your healthcare power of attorney. You want to make sure that they know that they have durable power of attorney for you should an event happen. Okay? A lot of people they put that in the trust and they don't even share that information. They would need to get some kind of copy. With the integrated trust systems, you could take a copy of this, right, and give it to your durable power of attorney. They can have that, right? So you can share that with anyone you want. Of course, you would give them a different password than yours, and they could never change anything. But this way, they know what to do if something happens to honor your wishes, whether you're incapacitated or you passed. 3 is you want to make sure you have the IRA beneficiary trust, integrated trust systems. They automatically include that into their plan. It helps if you have an IRA that maybe you can spread that out so your adult child only gets so much at a time. 4, you want to make sure that your successors of the trust, that means you unable to do that job anymore. You want to make sure, again, those are all up to date. Like you don't have an ex-spouse on there, a parent that has perished already. So you just need to make sure these things are updated. And there's something called a pour over will. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. But what is a pour over will? It's a catch-all. So can you imagine, let's say I got all my assets inside my trust, but I forgot that I have this antique car that I have in a barn. It's got value to it, right? So now I pass, and guess what? That's going to fall over into my will, but that part is probably going to go to probate. So understand that because they didn't get that into the trust. And then 6, we know from now until you pass, there's going to be lots of changes in the life, right? So you're going to have divorce, marriages, births. What if you became disabled? A disability of the family member. Again, we wouldn't want them to get a chunk of money all at once, because what is that going to do? That's going to block them from getting any Medicaid or financial aid, and that could really hurt them. So special needs children, even special needs adults, you want to make sure that they are protected and all the money doesn't go to them so they don't lose any benefits. That would not be efficient. And make sure that you're up to date on what you want to happen, right? And like in my father's case, it was clear. I do not want a respirator. I don't want any extraordinary needs. What if technology were to change a little bit? You want to make sure that you're kind of up to date on that. So I think that's very important stuff. So folks, I hope this gave you some insight, that at least enough where you should contact us and schedule an appointment. How do you do that? You can call us on the phone, 203-878-4598, or you can go right onto my calendar link. It's the number 4, yourretirement.com. And that will take you to my calendar, and you can schedule an online appointment or you can schedule an in-office appointment, because my office is located at 185 Plains Road. We're right off exit 36 out off 95. I'm in the Total Mortgage building. And this is a QR code that you can click that, take a picture of that, and that will take you right to my calendar as well. So I hope this gives you the tip of the iceberg with some information. I just encourage you to take the next step. Don't become that procrastinator. Let's get things done. Well, have a great day. Jim Lambert.